This week I found some interesting stuff in this book called The Eagle's Quest, and it's by Fred Allen Wolf, and it's a physicist search for the truth in the heart of the shamanic world. Let's start at nothing but vibrations, because it was so interesting what I did read here. Her answer turned out to be universal among shamans. What I look for is an imbalance or a disturbance. How do you sense an imbalance or a disturbance? It's a vibrational experience for me. Something vibrates back and forth. She told me that organs in the body vibrate. She said every organ runs at a different frequency, and every body runs at a different rate of speed at different times. So if there is a disturbance in the body, it appears as a deeper density. It's thicker. It's more massive. It's an interference. It's a speed interference. I was confused by her answer. I couldn't see how an interference was at the same time a density. It wasn't until much later that I saw it. I said, so it's an interference and it's a density. When you use the word density, I am not sure what you mean. Here is how I think of the concept of density. I have some objects in my hand. They are the same size. I pick one up and it weighs more than the other, so I know it's more dense. Are you doing something equivalent to that? Yes. Okay, could you explain what you're doing then? I use my hands as a receptor to perceive. My brain is an observer. My hand is a receiver. As I move through the density of the body, or any density that is dragging, I see as interference. It was only then, at that moment, riding in the boat to the jungle retreat up the Amazon River, that I knew what she meant. In my college physics days, I remember doing experiments with light and photosensitive films. We would make light waves interference patterns by allowing light to pass through a screen with two slits. For example, the waves of light coming from the slits would reach the film and make a pattern on the film. Because the light waves were vibrating, they would reach various points on the film in or out of phase with each other. We would observe a typical light wave interference pattern. To measure it, we had to use an instrument called a densimeter. Do y'all know that? Densimeter. It enabled one to measure how thick or dense the darkening of the film was in various locations of the development of the film. Candace was a shamka who operated in that cracked region between the two worlds of matter and spirit that Richard and Chris had told me about. She had told me earlier that when she heals someone, she sensed interference patterns using her hands as a kind of antenna. I reasoned that these patterns could be overlaps of waves, perhaps similar to interference patterns produced by electromagnetic waves. Such interference patterns were even present in atoms and molecules. Only the waves that overlapped were quantum waves of probability. These waves are guiding waves of matter. When these waves overlap positively, matter is more likely to manifest. When they overlap negatively, matter is least likely to manifest. The interference of these waves were crucial to where matter would manifest. I looked down at the waves that the boat made as it went along the river. I remembered our meeting again. I realized that Candace was describing her experience dealing with subtle other world matter. Perhaps she was dealing with matter from the mystic or imaginational realms. I didn't think she was referring to actual density of the body. She was perceiving another reality. I asked her, is there a particular place where the dot or knot forms? She told me that wherever it forms, the person has contracted his consciousness into the knot. It's like a dent in the energy field. Where the body has been hit with something, there is a recoil. Where it has been damaged or has been bruised, there is a little conflict going on at that spot. Candace confirmed that this knot manifestation started on a thought level first. She said it was magnetic. It all begins with a question, perhaps a doubt or insecurity is enough to start the process. The consciousness of the individual says, I wonder what will happen if, question mark. And that one question of faith or fear will draw the contraction in. The depth of this contraction depends on how much you invest in the thought. Your desire for manifestation is the attractor. It will attract from the cosmos, from the environment of the person. It will attract a degree of density that matches the person's desire. To the degree that the individual wants to investigate it, it will come right into the interior structure of the body, into the physiology. So the desire begins in the person's perceptions or thoughts. The amount of energy that is fueling these perceptions and the speed at which they travel decide how dense they will be in the body. For example, you may say, I want an ice cream cone. And it could be a fleeting thought. It's not a big desire, and it doesn't strike you as something overwhelming. But if you say it 25 times, it will engage with or connect to what you desire. Candace explained that with regard to these thoughts, we are like radio receivers and broadcasters. We are both sending and receiving answers to our thoughts at the same time, all the time. What you want actually comes magnetically to you by way of degree of your want. That's what speeds it up or down. And what you want can also be what you fear. I begin to see this action in terms of pathways between the present, linking something, and the future, having that something. So he says, I began to see this action in terms of pathways between the present, lacking something, and the future, having that thing. According to the transcendental view of quantum physics, there are an infinite number of pathways connecting them. Associated with each pathway is a probability of successful connection. If the present and the future events are in harmony with the universe, the probability of success is great. At a least action pathway will be present. Desire would simply be aware that what one wanted and what one could have were in reality the same thing. She pointed out that this action of receiving and sending could be simultaneously, but not necessarily. It was more of an action-reaction business. It was like having a menu and placing an order. Every thought that you have is like a pebble hitting still water, and the waves of that thought go out until they hit the shore of what it is that you are asking about, and then it starts waving back to you. I realized that this ability to alter reality by desire, thought, wish, or whatever is really non-judgmental. The self doesn't care if it is something that is going to harm you or help you. The universe is neutral in fulfilling your desires. I asked her if a person could get anything he or she wanted by putting the thoughts out there. Candace said, oh yes, anything you want. That's the universal law. It totally doesn't care. The universe has no judgment. If you say, I'm going to bring in that stuff that's going to kill me, the universal law says this is the way the law works, so this is what you are going to get. If you're going to bring in the stuff that's going to make you wiser or wealthier, it's going to do everything it can to provide you with that. That's interesting, isn't it? We've all heard that before, right? Do y'all have any comments?
I do.
Oh, good.
My experience has been that it's not just the thought, it's the emotion with the thought.
I think it goes later on into that very thing.
Sometimes
Imagination.
I'll have one thought of something that I wanted. You know, it's just a real passive, subtle thought that just flows through. And occasionally, it'll be right there. You know, like I get in the car to go or something, and it just materializes.
It's there.
Without any effort, no more thoughts that I was aware of, just that one thought. There was something that was so congruently together that brought that, that about. So it's kind of interesting.
And thoughts are actions. So we have that whole action reaction. Later, he goes into karma too. Now, thoughts create the karma because your thoughts are actions. There's reaction.
You know, the idea of surrendering your will, though. A lot of things that we think we want aren't really what we really want, because you get them and then you're like, huh. And so I think the thing that worries me is sometimes I have fears that go through my mind that are like, what if something happens to someone that I love or something like that. I don't know what kind of energy that carries. Then that's like, how do you dispel that thought? How do you neutralize that?
Right. Because you don't want that. And that's what he just says here. It's the same. Some of your desires and thoughts are really fear. And so that can manifest itself as well. And it does.
Well, my thought about that is from who I am and where I come from. Is like, and from the Buddhist thought of neutrality with any thought, is if I had a fear about something, I don't try to dispel it. I look at it. I just let it be there. And I look at it and I try to see what is underneath it. And then, so I guess there's a line between trying to dispel and be afraid of something, and then also the other end of that coin, the other side of that coin is dwelling too much on it, on the fear.
Well, you can always go deeper. You can always go deeper with your thoughts and your feelings and the way you're feeling. And I try to do that very often. Why do I feel whatever way it is? Even if it's happy. Well, why do I feel like that? What is my intention in this? Do you know what I mean? What is my, what did I gain out of this that makes me feel so happy? And you have to, a lot of times when you look at things like that, you realize, or you see a more selfish side. You see a side that wants things. Do you see what I mean? Not things, but for example, you may desire someone's happiness, but really for your comfort. Do you see what I mean? So that you won't be afraid for them. Do you know? Not so much that that's your well wishes for them, but it's going to do something. There's something in it for you, basically. Right. It's going to make you comfortable. And so every thought or every emotion that goes with these thoughts, you can kind of investigate and see what it's about. Even if it's something that makes you feel really happy, and most people don't want to investigate that. Happy, why investigate? Let's move on. Do you know what I mean? More happy. Bring more happy.
But yeah, just like you deprive somebody's, if you impose your emotional expectations on somebody else's journey, then you're kind of depriving them of the journey, because everybody's got journeys that are, their journeys have some dark places, some dips, and they have to be there.
Exactly.
For growth.
Mm-hmm. And those type of things are hard. And so that's what I mean by looking back, sitting back and looking at the way you feel and why you feel that way in any situation, I think. It's helpful and it's interesting. You find out some things about yourself, and why not? Why not find out some things about yourself? It doesn't always have to be about society or what society tells you about yourself. A lot of times I think we try to go with what we're supposed to be. And then we get really lost in what we're supposed to be because we're not that. And then we're stuck in that. And then there's this whole big fight to get out of that. And while you're getting out of that, everybody thinks you're crazy. So it's, I think it's worth taking the time to look at you, who you really are inside. Why do you feel the way that you do? Why do you do the things that you do?
I think the shortest route to getting that is surrender, because I think when you really can surrender, I think that insights come to you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go for them,
Right.
they just come to you because you kind of put yourself out of the picture.
Yeah, when you can let it go. And a lot of times you can't let it go. You step all night worrying about whatever it may be, or thinking about it, or trying to fix it some kind of way.
I think Marvin had a really good point earlier about, and the way I took it, Barbara, from inside of me was manifestation, intention versus surrendering will, or, right? Or how did you put it?
Was it about the fear?
It was before that, it was about your will, turning your will over.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, there's kind of a, I don't have it so clear with words, that it's either or, but what are the differences, and when we utilize one and the other, and of course that's for our own selves to answer, but like you were saying, some things we think we want, we may not really want.
Mm-hmm.
I think when our will is engaged,
Yeah.
we're very often trying to defend or justify or something, and every time we're coming from that position, we really do probably attract what we don't want.
Right.
Because we're coming from that position. That's why. But the hardest thing to do for most people, and it is for me, is to surrender my will. And once in a while, I have a kind of an epiphany where that happens, and I go, oh, this is a really good place to be.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how I could sustain that.
It's peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Edgar Casey talks about your intention. Your intention matters. And I often ask myself, what is my intention? But be honest when you ask that. Ask questions of yourself.
I think that the really great thing that sometimes you learn is that you really are just fine. Who you are, what you're doing, and where you are is exactly where and what, and everything is exactly like it's supposed to be.
Yes.
Even if you just failed and
Mm-hmm.
flunked out of school or got fired, it's really where you belong, because it's the universe turning your boat in the direction you're supposed to go. But it's so hard for us to think that way because we're so programmed to make good grades and to never get fired and always succeed. And I was just reading this in Sacred Contracts, how many amazing people like Mohammed and Christ and Buddha and all these people, they didn't start. It wasn't like like the way we have it in our culture, an understanding of what you are as a person. It's not formatted like we experience the format in school and jobs, all that. That's all so off. So off.
And you become very unhappy when you get stuck in that, because you try to satisfy that, or you try to become satisfied through that, and it's impossible, because that's not really who we are. Look at the public view of women in general. Just what you see in the media and what you see on TV is really, if you're just an outsider looking in, you would know nothing about a woman, really. You would just know nothing about, because that's not the truth. And a lot of times people try to go after that part of it and thinking that that's what they want, and then they get what's behind the scenes of that look, because there's other stuff back there. And it's not exactly what you wanted. It may be what you needed, but maybe not what you want. And I go with Barbara on that. I think that everything that happens is what is supposed to happen. There are no accidents or anything I think it's all meant to be. And a lot of times we say, how could this be meant to be? How is that possible?
Well, like you said, in our culture, there has to be certain things that we do that are successful and good, and we have to be happy, and we don't make room for real life.
Right.
And real life is happy, sad. You know, it's a lot of different emotions mixed in.
Together.
Mm-hmm. And we don't, in our culture, that's not the ideal way that we ought to be in the world. But it is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so we keep fighting against that.
We got to keep thinking, people.
I just think the best thing in the world
Working
is to
inward.
figure out how to surrender your will.
Yeah.
If you could practice doing that and kind of make that become a part of your everything that you do, life. And I haven't done it. I mean, I just kind of got the idea of it more today from something I was reading, but feels or agrees the best for you to move wherever it is you're supposed to go. I think it helps you get there.
It does. And I've done it before. I've practiced that. And it's peaceful. Because you get to a point where you realize there's nothing you can do except surrender. Because it's outside of your control at a certain point. And so once you let that go, or once you release that, things work out for themselves.